The EU has started an investigation into what they believe to be unjust subsidies coming from China to Chinese EV manufacturers. So it's money and support from China to Chinese businesses, which doesn't sound overly wrong to me. In turn, helping Chinese EVs be a little bit cheaper than some EVs from Europe, for example. So as those EVs are now being sold in Europe, they're in essence not happy about being undercut with price. So they're starting this investigation. Before we go into more detail, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Alexander and I make EV news videos every day. Please stick around until the end and let me know your thoughts and what you think of it in the comments at the end. So if you're watching this video, you'll probably like my other videos that I make on a daily basis. So please consider subscribing, and it's free. So, and press the like button as well. This helps me out. It doesn't cost you a thing. The president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, told EU lawmakers in Strasbourg, France, global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars, and their price is kept artificially low by huge state subsidies. This is distorting our market. That was what she said. She also said, as we do not accept this distortion from inside our market, we don't accept it from outside our market. So I can announce today that the Commission is launching an anti-subsidy investigation into electric vehicles coming from China. Interesting stuff, isn't it? So Europe is open to competition, but not for a race to the bottom, she said. We must defend ourselves against unfair practices. She didn't provide details about the investigation, but she did say some stuff, and I'll comment on this a bit at the end. The European Commission, under the leadership of President Ursula von der Leyen, announced this investigation, citing their concerns over the distortion of the European market by cheaper Chinese electric vehicles. These vehicles are believed to have their prices artificially lowered due to substantial state subsidies from China. So this probe is not limited to Chinese brands alone, but it encompasses battery-powered vehicles from China, including non-China brands such as Tesla, Renault, BMW, for example. Some of these subsidies that we know of are things like free land, so that these companies can build big factories and buildings on this land that's been given to them. This would otherwise have cost these companies huge money. Simple application processes that sort of catalyzed and shoved through the process so that they can get permission to produce EVs, and much cheaper rates on things like lithium and minerals and whatever they need for producing batteries. So these are some of the things that we do know are the advantages that the Chinese government are giving local to China, to their manufacturers that are producing EVs and selling them to the world. So they're helping their country, their businesses produce their products a bit cheaper so they can sell them and make money. So in a way, you think we would be doing the same thing in Europe, which I know we do in some way, but that's kind of the essence of what's going on. So the investigation is unique as it was initiated by the European Commission itself rather than being a response to an industry complaint as would be the usual. The Commission has a time frame of up to 13 months. I don't know why, that's a very specific number, but that's what they say. Up to 13 months to decide whether to impose tariffs above the standard 10% EU rate for cars. So bringing cars into the EU, they're considering upping that tariff for those foreign cars by more than 10%. Kind of like a Trump tariff, in the US it's 25 or 27%. This is the most high-profile case against China since the EU's investigation into Chinese solar panels about a decade ago, which, probably, 10 years ago, which narrowly avoided what, people say the term trade war, which I'm not a big fan of using the word trade war or price war. I think I used it once, but I try not to because it's just slapped around the internet everywhere. But it is a thing, and it does work at explaining what goes on when different companies are trying to undercut each other. They work themselves into a pit of very slim margins. It's not really good for them, but it is good for us as consumers. The response from the Chinese Chamber of Commerce to the EU has expressed its concerns and opposition to the investigation, emphasising that the competitive advantage of the sector is not due to subsidies from China. They have urged the EU to objectively assess Chinese electric vehicles. On the other hand, European car makers have acknowledged the challenge that's posed by Chinese companies coming and selling their things in Europe, especially as the automotive industry shifts toward electrification, especially very, very heavily in the EU. So the investigation reflects growing tensions between China and the EU, I think, especially in light of Beijing's closer ties with Moscow and Russia with this invasion of Ukraine. The EU aims to reduce its dependence on China, especially for materials and products essential for its green transition. This, I think, is becoming more obvious now. Following the announcement of the investigation, this is quite interesting, shares of Chinese EV producers experienced a decline of a few percent. So BYD shares dropped almost 3%, NIO 1%, XPeng 2.5% immediately after this news came out. European car makers, including Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, saw a brief surge in their shares, which now has normalised. Interestingly, it is a good thing to note that it is still on the cards. So if you remember a few years ago, Germany's BMW said that they were going to spend 650 billion euro and basically start making a lot of their EV minis and their minis cars in China. And they've now said they're gonna still, and I think it was most of their production was going to be done there. They've now recently said that they're going to do most of it, almost all of their EV stuff and their Mini Cooper cars in the UK, which is really, really good. But they'll probably still take some to China, I guess, unless the EU tries to in some way thwart that. So the EU's move to investigate Chinese subsidies for electric vehicles underscores the challenges and complexities of the global EV markets, I think. And as the world transitions to cleaner energy and a more sustainable version of transportation, such investigations highlight the need for fair competition and balanced trade practices. Some people would say that the European Union are simply just bad losers. So obviously I'm English. Take Brexit, for example. They seemed somewhat childish and a bit pouty, I think. But in a very real sense, you can understand what they're saying and why they're saying it. So we should never really forget to support local businesses, whether that's neighbouring countries and whatnot. With anything we buy, it supports your local economy, and that always is a good thing to do, I think. However, on the flip side, critics might argue that the rise of Chinese EVs in the European market is simply a result of market dynamics. If Chinese manufacturers can produce high quality EVs at lower prices, they have every right to compete in the European market. So with regards the green transition, the EU has really ambitious environmental goals, and the transition to EVs is a crucial part of this, ensuring the health and competitiveness of the EU market, or the EU industry of EVs, could be seen as vital to achieve these objectives that they've set themselves. The EU want fair competition. The EU might argue that the investigation is to ensure a level playing field for all market participants. This is another angle. If the Chinese EVs are indeed being heavily subsidised, they could potentially undercut European manufacturers, which makes it difficult for them to compete on price. Naturally, what do you all think about this? I'd love to know, and I read all of your comments on all of my videos. There are a select few people that comment a lot, and I really, really appreciate it. I really love reading your stuff. I love to make these videos, but to be honest, at the same time, one of the best things for me is getting responses to my videos, good or bad. I don't really mind at all. I just really like interesting comments, you know. Thank you very much to Mika Davis too. I always look forward to your comments. They're always there, and they're really interesting. Thank you very much. And also thanks very much to the people that chuck me about $3 a month on Patreon, YouTube memberships, buy me a coffee. Literally keeps me going through the month and helps me out. So I'm not one of these rich YouTubers, that's for sure. And it's really touching. Thank you very much, because I know it's a few dollars and it's actual money, and you send that. So awesome, thank you. If you enjoyed the video, remember to subscribe and press the like button to show YouTube that you enjoyed my video, which in turn spreads the video to more people because it tells YouTube to show more people. So that's really, really nice.